Haven't seen the first one? Well, that's perfectly fine because there's tons of recycled footage all throughout this one. The reason I'm doing this review is because I was binge watching some worst movies on YouTube reviews with our good friends Bird and Gutter, which, by the way, if you don't watch their channel, I'm going to make sure to link them in the description. They make great content. They're really nice guys. Bird, Gutter, if you see this, word out to you guys. As I was going through their back catalog, I saw that they covered the movies Criminally Insane and Criminally Insane 2, also known as Crazy Fat Ethel and Crazy Fat Ethel 2. Then I thought to myself, oh yeah, those were movies that happened, alright? And I think, like, Red Letter Media talked about Crazy Fat Ethel 2. Then I got curious and I was like, well, is it on YouTube? And sure enough, yeah, the first one and the second one are both on YouTube. Criminally Insane is a 1987 horror film written and directed by Nick Millard. It is the sequel to the 1975 film Criminally Insane. This sequel was shot on video and is 50% clips from its predecessor. The film contains roughly 30 minutes of new content. I fucking knew it. Oh, and unsurprisingly, the movie has a 2 out of 10 rating on IMDb, so yeah, I would say that is fairly fucking accurate. Now, just to get this out of the way, I didn't watch the first movie, and I'm honestly not even disappointed in that, because when I watched this movie, they just kept showing footage from the first one all throughout it, and I'm just like, well, I feel like I don't even need to see anything. This is like watching a really sloppily edited best-of reel on YouTube. First movie came out in 1975, I believe, and this one came out in 1987, so there's like a 12-year gap from the first movie to this movie. And it really shows, because every time they show footage from the first movie and then they cut back to footage from this movie, there's such a stark contrast, because this one looks more like a really crappy straight-to-video movie from the late 80s, and the first one looks like a theatrical movie. Not a good one, but it does look like a, weird psychedelic 70s slasher movie that was maybe shown on a couple of movie screens in America. From what I can tell about the first movie in the many reused clips they have throughout this thing, the first movie came out in 75, and it's about this crazy woman who has an eating problem, and she basically just keeps going around slashing people. And that's at least one thing I could say about the first one compared to this. At least it had a higher kill count, because there's tons of scenes of her killing people, especially compared to how low the body count in this movie was. Like, I don't know, 4 or 5 people died, maybe. But what I love about the footage from the first movie, it's one of those movies where it's so low grade that, like, they'll have a person, about to stab another person, and they bring the knife just barely to the person, so that way they don't actually hurt the person. But it's sloppily edited where it's like, knife, cut to, like, red paint on the back of the person, and their reaction, cut back, person's taking away the knife hand. Anyway, after the events of the first one, we jump forward and we see that Crazy Fat Ethel is now in some kind of insane asylum, and she's eating pudding in a scene that takes way too long. People that run this mental asylum that she's in say that they're starting to get under budgeted, so they're going to have to start letting people out, specifically people who haven't been violent in the last 5 years, and they're going to drop them off at some kind of home run by some old lady who's going to take care of them and try to rehabilitate them even further to let them back out into the world. That's basically the setup for this movie. You have it that Ethel is dumped off at this old woman's house, Mrs. Bartholomew, and she eventually snaps and starts killing some of the other people that are there. Now, the first, 15, 20 minutes of this movie and the last 15, 20 minutes of this movie are nothing but constantly showing clips of the first movie while Ethel is asleep, as if they're supposed to be, haunting her memories. They're like bad dreams that are trying to awaken her psychotic killer urges. Everything in this is so poorly edited, and again, the quality is such a massive jump. So every time they do show footage of the first movie and then this, it is so baffling because it doesn't even look like the same thing. But sure enough, yeah, it is. It's from the same director and writer, and it's the same actress from the first one. So it just constantly jumps back and forth in terms of quality. And it's like, the first one doesn't look that good, but it at least looks theatrical. Like, at least it looks like it was on film versus this, which looks like it was filmed with one of those, like, shoulder mount VHS cameras they had back in the 80s. Seriously, so low grade. Every time they have the camera zoom, you could, like, just barely hear, like, the sound effect on the camera lens zooming. It's so bad.
Lunch is now being served. I repeat, luncheon is now being served.
As for some of the other people that are in this house, we have Mrs. Bartholomew, this old grandmotherly type woman who's trying to help these guys get better. Then there's this one guy who, worst movies on YouTube, nicknamed Crazy Hands. I personally would like to give him the nickname of Man Spider because every time they show him, he's doing this thing with his hands. It looks like he's trying to do that thing where, like, you're trying to make your hands look like spiders. And there's even a part where he's, like, trying to climb on a wall. And I'm just like, okay, wow, he's not Spider-Man, he's Man Spider. Oh, and speaking of Man Spider, there's a part where he's dancing around in the backyard, and it was at that point I started wondering, like, was this made as a joke? Like, was this supposed to be like some surrealist, let's fuck with the audience type of filmmaking? Like, was this like a Harmony Korine movie or some shit? But no, it wasn't. Oh, and just like the scene with the pudding, the scene of him dancing in this backyard area is one of the many scenes that goes on way too long. Another guy with a mustache who she thinks is some cop who is, I'm guessing it's a character from the first movie. But he's basically just this, like, creepy dude with a Ron Swanson mustache. He talks about, like, killing his wives or something at one point.
This reminds me of my third wife. I gave her a cup of coffee with strychnine in it.
The movie tries to paint it like Ethel is probably like the anti-hero. Like, yeah, she's a bad person and she kills people, but at least she's more moral than this guy, because he talks about killing his wives, and he at one point tries to blackmail her because he knows that she killed someone in the house, and he says, like, oh, if you don't give me your desserts, then I'm gonna rat you out to the cops or something like that.
I'm not gonna tell that cop out there anything, but you're gonna give me your desserts for the next month.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And the first guy that she kills is this one dude who also lives there. Like, I guess he's, like, related to Miss Bartholomew because he helps with the food at one point. Like, I don't know if he's, like, some medical professional who lives in with her, or if he's, like, related to her, like her grandson or nephew or some shit.
Well, dinner's gonna be a little late tonight. And I don't want to hear any complaints about the corned beef hash.
But the reason that she kills him is because she really wants snacks. And at one point there's a scene where he teases/seduces her with a Baby Ruth and a Hershey bar in one of the many scenes that takes forever. It also has the added bonus of being incredibly awkward. While we're talking about this guy, I have to mention he has another one of the most dragged out scenes in the movie. Just like the thing with the pudding and Man Spider dancing around in the backyard, there's a scene where he shows up and is like, oh, the meal for today is corned beef on hash or something like that. And then it shows him get like 3 or 4 cans of dog food, and he opens up every single one and dumps them all out, scoops them out onto plates, and we see him do it for every single can. Now, I've seen plenty of movies that have dragged on and have had very little happen in them. You know, the David Dakota talking animal movies like A Talking Cat or A Talking Horse, or, Love on a Leash, Time Machine I Found at a Yard Sale, the granddaddy of all boring movies with Manos the Hands of Fate. Seriously, when they drag scenes out in this thing, It is so fucking monotonous. Half the time I kept looking at the screen and go, we know, we get it, for God's sake. Anyway, Ethel finally snaps because she wants those candy bars, so she gets some wire that she rips off of her curtain, and then she uses it to make like a lasso, and she hangs Johnny Depp from the staircase. And again, all this was over candy bars. Not since Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, have I seen a movie have a killing start because of a candy bar.
I'll just put it over here. And later on, when you're hungry, you can have it. Well, if that's the way you feel, forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
So yeah, she kills that guy and takes his candy bars. A cop comes to the door saying that there was a murder that happened recently and they want to investigate. And of course they're suspicious of her because she was once a convicted killer. The guy with the mustache says that he knows it was her and he'll rat her out to the cops unless she gives him her desserts. He says that she ain't having that, so then what she does is she dumps rat poison in his tea. He drinks the tea, but apparently that's not quick enough for her, so when he comes into the kitchen and tries to put the cup away, she then just grabs several knives and just stabs him in the back. And like I mentioned earlier, it's so horribly edited. It's Bartholomew notices that she's now eating a bag of pretzels, and she doesn't take too kindly to that. So she tries to take the pretzels away. She grabs something off of a shelf. I don't know what it is. It's some kind of blunt object, and just starts bashing her head in a couple of times. And, oh, great, she killed everyone. Then a different cop shows up to the house and finds all the bodies murdered, and then she starts wielding a knife, chases him around the family room a couple of times.
Ethel, put that goddamn knife down now! Put that knife down!
Does another sloppily edited stab to the back, he dies, and then she goes out into the backyard and starts dancing around with a knife in hand and a dog trying to jump up on her. She lies down on the couch, starts napping, more recycled footage from the first movie, and then the movie ends with her going to the door and she lies about being Miss Bartholomew, and the person at the door doesn't see any of the dead bodies or smell them, because, you know, dead bodies fucking reek. So you think he would have noticed that, but the point is, yeah, she lies about being Miss Bartholomew. Crazy smile, the end.
I'm Hope Bartholomew, and I hope you'll be very happy here.
Production-wise, this movie is like the 80s equivalent of something like Flying Ryan, where you can clearly tell that it was just a small group of people who had a camera and very limited resources, and they decided one day, you know what? Screw it, let's just make a movie. You know, we have a script lying in a trunk somewhere, so you know what? You know, they got a couple of their friends at the retail job they have, and we're like, hey, you know what? Let's make a movie. And then, you know, we'll work on it all summer, and then we'll watch it back, and, you know, we can laugh at all the good times we had while making the movie. And that way we could just say one day, hey, we made a movie. And you know what? Nothing inherently wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. The thing is, yeah, I'm usually critical of movies like this, but if movies have, like, a good intention, and, like, yeah, they're cheap, but they at least seem to be having fun with it, that's totally fine. And there are a couple of scenes in this movie where it does feel like they're trying to do something like that. Like, as low grade as they are, it at least feels like they're trying to do something. But the fact that this movie is padded out with constant reused footage from the first movie and just constantly dragged out scenes with people just doing things and they go on way too long, that's where the entertainment factor really goes down the tubes for this movie. Like I said earlier, I really was nervous about reviewing this one without even really seeing the first movie. Aside from watching Worst Movies on YouTube's review, I was like, all right, well, you know, maybe I should watch the first one. But then they kept reusing footage. I was like, all right, I guess I don't have to rewatch it now because they're pretty much just showing best of moments from the first movie. I don't even really feel comfortable comparing this to another bad sequel that I've talked about for Blockbusters, because at least with those, as bad as they were, they usually tried to fall in line with the first movie. Like, you look at something like Zoolander 2. That was trying to be like the first Zoolander while also giving it a modern update and failing. And even like other bad straight-to-video sequels, like, you know, George of the Jungle 2, or stuff like Cop and a Half 2, or Bigger, Fatter, Liar, stuff like that. Those usually were like either just closet remakes of the first one. This one feels like it was both trying to be a sequel while also constantly reminding you of the first one, so much so they literally just lift footage wholesale. And that right there just shows a lack of confidence to me. It just goes to show, like, they had such little movie this time around that they just went, oh, we can just pad it out later with just reused scenes from the first one. Like, they had such little to do. In fact, they even joked about that in the Worst Movies on YouTube review. They were like, if you cut out all the flashbacks, this probably would have been like a 20-minute movie. So yeah, this movie was stupid. It wasn't even like so bad it was good, or like, you know, oh, so low budget that it was entertaining. It's just kind of like, all right, well, that killed an hour that I'm never going to get back. I do want to talk about more bad horror movies like this, but I'd have a different movie planned for next time. Next time we're going to be looking at a movie that's kind of a drama, kind of a romance movie. It's been doing rounds in terms of like bad movies that a lot of people have been reviewing. A lot of people say it's up there with like Cool Cat in the Room in terms of like how poorly made it is and how badly the director has been taking criticism. In this case, it is basically the poor man's version of The Social Network, except instead of Facebook, it's a dating app, and it's called Swiped. And I've heard so much about it, but I actually haven't seen the movie in full yet, so yeah, see how that turns out next time. But until then, I'm Adam Sykes of the Blockbusters Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.